We have the one, the only Judge Andrew Napolitano on the stream with us, on the radio show with us. Judge, how are you today?
I'm great, Joey. How are you, my dear friend?
I'm doing quite well, and there's so much to get to. I kind of want to just get your first blush on all this news about Biden could drop out. I'm sure you're seeing in the news all these moves that seem to be made behind the scenes. It could be that both President Biden and Donald Trump, given the legal problems, neither will be the nominee going forward.
I'm of the personal view that would make the country very happy if neither is the nominee. I do believe that all this talk is well orchestrated by about half the Democrats who question whether or not the president is mentally competent to serve another 4 years, and whether he has the stamina to take on Donald Trump or Chris Christie or Ron DeSantis or whoever the Republicans are going to nominate. You're too young to remember when Senators Howard Baker and Barry Goldwater went to Richard Nixon in the summer of '74. You weren't born yet,
Right.
and said, "Mr. President, it's time for you to go. This is a tidal wave, and we can't hold it back." And Nixon did the right thing, and I'm talking about resigning. I think that some senior Democrats need to come to the president and say, for the sake of the party, it's time for you to step aside. Your stewardship is indefensible. Your mental and physical status will be on display and under scrutiny in a way that they probably can't tolerate. And it's time for you to go back to Rehoboth Beach.
Right.
I don't know how he'd react to that, but I think that's coming. And all the chatter we hear about it is, as I said, a well-orchestrated effort to make that the logical conclusion of the path. However, there are still many Democrats that want him to run because he's one of theirs and they think he can win.
And yet, here's just a quote from the UN. We'll play the full clip later, folks. This is from President Biden at the UN today. Quote, "If we allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of any nation secure?" And it's one thing to put that message out there as a president, but this president in his mental state, what are we doing here? This is insane.
Joey, this is very dangerous. Last week, in an off-the-cuff statement, the President of the United States said, by the way, I can put troops on the ground and I don't need Congress's consent. Now, constitutionally, that's wrong and it's unconstitutional, but it is lawful because of the War Powers Resolution. Even though it's a statute, it's called a resolution, which was enacted after President Nixon, again, the Nixon example, after President Nixon invaded Cambodia. Nixon vetoed the War Powers Resolution because he felt it crimped his style, requires notification to Congress within 48 hours and a vote by Congress within 30 days and the return of the troops within 90 days unless Congress votes to keep them there. So can Joe Biden put troops on the ground, combat troops in Ukraine on his own with a phone call, the stroke of a pen? Answer, yes. Has he done so? There are troops on the ground. They are not in combat and they are not in uniform, but they're there. It's very, very dangerous because they're violating the Geneva Conventions. They can, here we go again with morality versus law. They can't be morally killed, but they can legally be executed as spies.
Yeah, I almost wonder how many, if we had to stack up like the laws here, how many feet high would it be of all the laws that are immoral and unconstitutional but lawful? You got to wonder.
Well, the Constitution only authorizes the federal government to enact 2 criminal statutes, making it a crime to commit treason, defined in the Constitution, and making it a crime to debase the money supply. All other criminal laws, it was the intention of the framers, were to be handled by the states. So how many statutes have they enacted? At last count, it's hard to count because some of them have different parts and there's a debate, is this a different statute even though it's under the same section? At last count, with a conservative count, 5,500. So 5,498 are unconstitutional.
Wow.
I mean, you
And
can't make this up.
and yet the force of law is still very real. And
Oh God, we didn't have a Justice Department until the Ulysses S. Grant administration until 1875. Before that, if the feds needed to sue anybody, they hired a law firm, usually a Wall Street law firm. And if somebody needed to be prosecuted, the states did it. But now there are between 90 and 100,000 employees in the Department of Justice. That, of course, pales in size compared to the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you, George W. Bush, which has 250,000 federal police officers.
Heckgum. And then, we've often talked about Donald Trump's legal woes. And I suppose there is a bit of what the media is calling a smoking gun. Don warned his assistant, quote, "You don't know anything about the boxes." And so folks might not like these laws. Folks like yourself might even find some, like these conspiracy laws, they're unconstitutional. They shouldn't be there in the first place. But they are the laws. They are the force of law and have it behind them. So where do you think this is going with Trump, especially this latest leak to the media about this witness they have?
It's not going very well, and I'll compound the leak to the media. My column this week, the one that you'll get this afternoon, that comes out on Wednesday night, is called "His Own Worst Enemy Again," and it recounts what he said in the Meet the Press interview on Sunday. So when the fourth of the indictments came out, John Lauro, very well respected lawyer, very handsome guy, square jaw, looks right out of Central Casting, did an excellent job on all the Sunday talk shows saying advice of counsel is the defense. What does the president know about bookkeeping in New York, or espionage in Florida, or conspiracy in D.C., or election law in Georgia? He relied on advice of counsel. Now, is that a defense? Yes, it is a defense. When the government has to prove criminal intent, advice of counsel negates that. Except when the defendant goes on national television and said, "I didn't believe anything my lawyers told me, and I didn't follow what they told me." What? He just undercut the best and perhaps the only defense he has in all four cases with those statements. Why didn't you believe them? They're rhinos. Nobody believes rhinos, Republican in name only. It was an absurd conversation in which he engaged, and it must have caused his lawyers severe palpitation. He is his own worst enemy.
In a second, I want to get to your op-ed from last week, but just as a quick follow-up, because we played that Meet the Press interview with Kristen Welker and Trump pretty much in full. We did kind of some Mystery Science Theater, starting and stopping it. And aside from the legal troubles and all the politics around it, you've actually known Trump for a while now on a personal level. Does he look like the same guy you've always known, like his energy, the way he's carrying himself, or does he seem troubled or tired? Like, what's your assessment when you see the man these days?
He does not seem troubled or tired to me, and he seems as energetic, enthusiastic, and sharp as ever. I mean, he has a lot of crazy ideas, but in terms of his energy level, he's very sharp. I mean, there's no way Joe Biden could stand next to him in a debate. I mean, when Trump says Biden can't compose two complete sentences, that's true. Trump could go on for an hour and a half. Now, he botches the grammar, but there's no question about his energy and his drive.
There you go.
He once picked me up like I was a little baby and kissed me and said, "Here's why we love the judge." It's a long, funny story, and that's the culmination of it. But he's a big, strong, it's in front of a lot of people, too. It's a little embarrassing. A big, strong, energetic guy. I mean, the columns I write about him are not to be critical of him politically. It's just to explain the law. In this case, this rarely used but occasionally successful, and in his case, until Sunday, most appropriate defense of advice of counsel is now out the window.
Oh, well, we'll see where all that goes, and that's an everyday topic. What's happening with Biden, what's happening with Trump, and all the politicking and jockeying behind the scenes. But one thing that happened, I guess last week or the week before, I started to get quite worried personally when we saw with COVID, all these governors, all these mayors and the like just unilaterally shutting things down. it struck me that, it's not just the COVID crisis. They're going to bring up the climate crisis. They're going to bring up the crisis of gun violence and declare an emergency and take away rights. It seems that's exactly what happened in New Mexico, or at least what the governor of New Mexico tried to do. What is the backstory here, and why is she so off base in this?
Well, she's off base because she has utterly rejected her oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution and the New Mexico Constitution, where the language protecting the right to keep and bear arms from government intrusion is even more specific than the American Constitution. She has declared gun violence in Albuquerque and the county in which Albuquerque, New Mexico is located as a health emergency, and therefore declared that nobody can carry a gun. The sheriff of the county said, I'm not enforcing it. The police chief of Albuquerque said, I'm not enforcing it. She was forced to bring in state troopers who in New Mexico have other things to do, like patrolling the highways. After 3 days of this nonsense, a federal judge invalidated it. She since has crafted another one saying, okay, you can carry a gun anywhere except in public parks. I think she is determined to see how far she can go interfering with personal liberty. This is a basically traditionalist state, largely Hispanic, mostly Catholic, very family oriented, but the government is liberal Democrat. I think they just want to see how far they can get away with this. The Supreme Court has said the value underlying all gun laws today must be how gun laws were understood publicly by the ratifiers of the First Amendment. That's in 1791. Well, in 1791, you could carry a gun in Albuquerque. You could carry a gun in a public park. If there were such things as public parks, you could certainly carry it in a public place. That's the guideline, the guidepost for state regulations of guns. Moreover, she's the governor. She's not the legislature. She can't make up laws at all, much less laws that interfere with personal liberties that she's sworn to preserve, protect, and defend.
Well, and it's always good to remember, sometimes I don't like saying back to blue. I prefer to say support your local sheriff, because you can get sheriffs say, I'm not enforcing that. You can get, I believe the attorney general in New Mexico in this case said, I'm not enforcing this.
Well, I mean, here's an example. When you are confronted with two authorities, an oath to uphold the Constitution, your boss ordering you what to do. Edward Snowden, an oath to keep information secret, your oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, which includes the Fourth Amendment. Which oath do you follow? You follow the higher oath. Sometimes the higher oath is a moral oath, an oath to what's plainly right and wrong. Sometimes it's an oath to the Constitution. But you sometimes are in those positions where you're forced to make those judgment calls, as the Attorney General of New Mexico and the sheriff of this county that Albuquerque is in, the name of the county escaping me, and the police chief in Albuquerque did.
Well, we're pretty much out of time here, but what do you have coming up on Judging Freedom, your podcast this week?
I have a very interesting afternoon of Larry Johnson, Colonel McGregor, and Professor Sachs. Professor Sachs of Columbia University, the leading academic on why we should stop aid to Ukraine tomorrow. But today he's talking about another area of interest to him. Where did COVID originate? And why did the CIA bribe CIA agents to remain silent over what they knew about the origins of COVID? Wild stuff. 4:30 this afternoon Eastern.
Again, folks, that's Judging Freedom. I tend to watch on YouTube, and this afternoon I will not miss it. I'll watch all of those. But you can listen wherever podcasts are available. And as always, appreciate your time, Judge.
Thank you, Joey. All the best, my friend.
You too, sir. Again, that's Judge Andrew Napolitano. Fantastic, as always, having him on the program. And plenty more to get to today.